Hello everybody and welcome. Peter Horgan, my colleague in Croke Park, has been rolling out webinars for the last month or so with some international coaches and many eloquent speakers. So tonight, I suppose, is a kind of a little offshoot of that, where we decided to offer you some hurling specific workshops. And tonight is looking at coaching and managing a hurling team part 1, and we'll be focusing in mostly on planning and skills. So you're all very welcome. In the background, I have Damien Coleman, who is the Connacht Hurling Development Manager, and I have Dara Cox, who managed Sligo there to win under Lowry Mar 2 years ago. So Damien, you want to say hello there?
Yeah, hello Martin. We're delighted to be part of the programme with you over the next couple of Monday nights. We're looking forward to it, and it'll do your heart good to see 800 people coming on this call tonight, and I hope everybody takes something away from the presentation.
Dara, would you like to say hello there?
Yeah, good evening all. Good evening, Martin. Really looking forward to this one, and enjoyable night ahead, I'm sure.
So folks, if you want to type in a little question for later on at any stage, there's a little bubble there with text on it somewhere on your screen, and Dara and Damien will be taking note of those. So again, you know, to welcome everybody, we have people from every county in Ireland here, which is tremendous really. And I suppose, you know, it's hard to know how many people are interested in this kind of stuff. So it's heartening to see that. But I want to say a very special welcome to people that are from afar. We have people from Canada, North America, New York, New Zealand, Dresden, Prague, Scotland, Austria, Dubai, Hamburg and Belgium logged in here. So I'm delighted to see the interest in hurling, you know, abroad. And I suppose I wasn't really aware of that until last year down at the World Games on the invitation of 3 very hard working colleagues, Anya, Kayleen and Tracy, to see so many people from abroad and, you know, the work that you're putting into hurling. So look at, we'll get going now in a moment. I have one other little welcome to make. A very good friend of mine gave us all a fright there in the last few weeks and spent a bit of time in hospital. But thankfully he's been released, and I just want to say hello to him. Welcome home, Seamus. Seamus McShane up there in Ballantyne in the County Antrim. I've been up with Seamus. Seamus, he runs a lovely hostel there at Sheep Island, and I brought a few teams up over the years and got to know him very well. And sitting beside him there is Shay, his son, who's looking in from New York. So hello Shay, how are you? Shay was home during the summer and he came around to a few little courses with me, and he was my, I suppose he was my sidekick, and he brought me for a spin over the Rockies, is the way I would describe it. Heading over to Cushendall there. It was a spin to him, but I'm still recovering from it, Shay. But anyway, Seamus is some man, folks. You know, you couldn't go to a better place than up to the north of Antrim for a bonding weekend or something different for your team. I don't know why people go abroad to La Manga and Spain and all these places. You know, you just can't beat Ballantyne. You get the best of matches up there. You have top class teams there in Ballycastle, Dunloy, Lochiel, Cushendall and down the road Schlockneil, some of the best clubs in Ireland. And then you have, of course, you know, if your team is not a senior team, if it's a junior team or an intermediate team, you have little clubs there like Armagh and Cushendun, and no better place to go. So we went up a few times and played a few games, and then went down to Seamus's beach, down here on the beach in Ballantyne. So, you know, strength and conditioning comes into its own down there. And again, if you're lucky, Seamus, as well as doing up a good fry for you every morning, he might sing an old song or two for you. So Seamus, this one is for you.
I met my love by the gasworks floor. Dreamed that dream by the old canal. I kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town.
So Seamus, you get yourself well very quickly there, and do what Mary and Alien tell you. And we're looking forward to that big party that's lined up for you, and hopefully we might get to hear you singing the old triangle. So now, folks, in case we turn this into a hospital request show, we'll move on. And just to get into the mood, I just want you to relax there for 30 seconds.
Wexford don't have as many back as perhaps they could have. A Tipperary won't goals, and Seamus Coleman is in around the back. Is this the number 7? It's a magnificent 7 goals in 7 successive games for Seamus Coleman. Wexford were caught up the field. Tipperary have got their goal.
Yeah, in the last few minutes, Tip coming back into it. Here's Niall O'Mara, long hand pass. Callan had his mind made up, and what a rocket to the corner of the net. We don't see much of that anymore. We see Callan absolutely connected right on the meat, and a brilliant goal. And in fairness to Tipperary in the last 2 or 3 minutes, you know.
The commentator there said we don't see very much of that anymore. Now, much as it pains me to see a Tipperary man putting a ball in the back of the net, well, okay, that wasn't against us, but if you ever needed a reason, folks, to practice ground hurling, there you have it. I mean, what a goal. I've often asked how long it took to score that goal on various courses, and I'd be given answers like 2 seconds, 1 second, half a second, etc. But my answer is always no. It took 10 years. It took 10 years to score that, 10 years of practice on ground hurling. And, you know, when the chance comes, you got to be able to take it. I have some clips, not tonight, of other goals, but I also have clips of people that got the chance and they missed the shot because they hadn't practiced. And I know that Seamus, you know, he's the hurler of the year. And I know for certain that he practices his ground hurling very, very regularly. And I suppose simply, if it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for us. Now, before we get into the real nuts and bolts of tonight, my next slide is a slide that I put up on every course I ever give. And if it's a practical, I refer to it. And I suppose really and truly, I'm going to haunt people with this slide, because to me, it is so important. There are certain elements of the game, and if you concentrate on them and focus on them, well, you won't go too far wrong. So folks, I don't mind whether you're training an inter-county senior team or you're training your club under 6s. Those essentials, that's the bread and butter of hurling and camogie, without a shadow of doubt. And the more knowledgeable people that I meet, the more of them are saying the same things, and we got to keep focused in on them. Now, I have 2 little additions to it. They didn't make the top 7, but movement is so important as well. And movement includes twisting and turning, running, jumping, agility, evasion, you know, everything almost to do with fitness. And the other one I put in there is not fouling. Not fouling is a huge skill. I mean, how many teams lose games by 3 or 4 points and look back after and say, look, we gave away 5 or 6 frees that we shouldn't have given away. No, you shouldn't give away any frees, but some ones are just careless. So if you're focusing on those essentials, and again, I use the word essentials because people sometimes call them the basics, and I just don't think the word basic does those skills credit enough. They're so important, and they're not easy. They take a lot of work, and you'll see that tonight and probably every night I'll be speaking, we'll be coming back to all of these little by little. So look at coaching. How do you go about it? Now, I know you're all probably coaching teams at different age grades, and I hope you get something out of it. Because at the end of the day, the game is the game. If it's under 12s or it's inter-county senior, it's the same pitch, more or less, the same rules. The physicality can be different, but the game is the game. So, if you're starting out as a coach or you're at it for a while, you ask yourself, how do I go about it? What should you do? How long should you train for? These are the questions that come up. How many players should I involve in a skill or a drill or whatever? And, that's what we'll try and address here in the next 2 or 3 hours. Okay, it won't be 2 or 3 hours. Normally when I go up to Ara there in Sligo or Damien, anywhere across Connacht, we're watching the clock and we tell people, lads, we'll try and have you home by 12 o'clock, but you're you're all home now, so I suppose it doesn't really matter. You can just switch off the computer if you want anyway. So look at planning your coaching. Does planning make sense? You know, I know people that never plan. They just go ahead and make it up from night to night, and many of them have been successful. So what I'm saying to you tonight is not gospel, it's just suggestions. But I think it does make sense that if you plan a little bit, you're giving yourself a better chance of success. And I would say each night needs to be planned. Maybe plan for a week, plan for a fortnight, plan for a month, and plan for a season. And needless to say, you can change the plan at any stage. So in my own case, I would always have a little scrap of paper in my pocket going to a session. Now you probably, this means nothing to you what you're looking at there, but it means a lot to me. Basically, I'm looking at whatever, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I'm looking at 80 minutes there of a session with 10 minutes wastage. And I'm looking at 10 minutes there for a bit of striking. I'm looking at 10 minutes for mobilization, kind of a little bit of S&C, a little bit of hopping and bounding, whatever needs to be done. Then I'm looking at maybe a specific drill or exercise to tackle maybe a component of the game that maybe my team needs to work on. And then the most important part of the session is an actual game. Now the game there, if you can read it, it could be 10 minutes 5 versus 5, and it could be 30 minutes of a full game. But anyway, the key to it is that you have a little note written down and you know what you're doing when you get to the field. Now I'd always put in an extra bit or two at the back, just in case something is not working out and you have to change it or something, you run out of time. It's always helpful to have a little bit extra there on the back of the sheet. A very important thing, I think, is before you actually go to the field, look at your session, pick up your little bit of paper and ask yourself, how does that session look from a player's perspective? Because sometimes as coaches, we think, this is deadly. You know, I have 6 or 7 drills there, and I have cones here and poles there, and it's deadly. But if you're a player and you look at it, you might say, oh God, there's no game. So if you ask yourself, if I was a player, how would this look? I think you won't go too far wrong either. Again, I'd be suggesting to you, you know, write it down. Again, my desk gets full of notes like so. And, you know, many of them are just sessions. And there in the centre, maybe a pitch layout. Because, you know, if you're doing 5 or 6 different things, you want to have an idea in your head where you're going to do it. How is one thing going to flow into the next? And if you have it written down, well, then you're not going to go too far wrong. So again, moving on a little bit further, I actually hope you can't read this because it's dating back a while. But, you know, at some stage, maybe at the start of the year, you're going to broadly plan maybe your whole year. Now, again, you will change it, of course. You might be into your plan maybe 2 weeks and you see something doesn't fit, something needs tweaking, and that's fine. Even on a night, I might go down to the field and I have a plan for the night, and after 10 minutes you say, this is not working, this is not good, and you scrap it and you go to something else. So very, very roughly there, what you're looking at is a kind of an 8-week plan I pulled out, a very basic one. There's no detail in it. And roughly speaking, we were training 3 nights a week over a period of whatever number of weeks. And the little section there in green was that one night was going to be a bit of stamina work. And this was with a senior team and it was early season. The second session then of the week was in blue there, if you can see it, which was going to have a little bit of circuit training and hurling drills. And the third session was going to be hurling or a match. Now again, what you can do will be determined by the facilities you have and the time of the year. And at that time, we didn't have any lights. Well, we still don't have lights. We had a couple of candles, so we couldn't do very much in the night time. And our hurling was limited to the weekend. So you had either your Saturday or a Sunday. Now within each of those areas, you will have a further plan. For example, if we're working on stamina, strength, fitness, S&C, whatever you call it, over a period of 10 weeks, well, you're going to have a separate plan for that. What exactly are we going to do? If you're working on skill over a period of 10 weeks, what exactly are you going to do? And then the games part of it. Are there going to be in-house games? Are there going to be challenge matches? Whatever. So again, if you set out a broad plan, it's very, very easy then change it. Now, people often ask, you know, how does a single session look? Again, I'd recommend you write it down. So I look at a session here that's, we'll say 80 minutes. Now, normally with adults, I'd have it maybe 90 minutes, but somewhere between 75 and 90 minutes. With underage, if there were minors, I'd still be probably looking at 80 minutes as well, but I mightn't drive them as hard. So the possible detail for one night session. First thing you're going to have to ask yourself, how many players are you expecting? How are you going to organise it? And how long is it going to be? So I have roughly divided this session into two sections, 30 minutes skill development. And that skill development then is divided there, as you can see. Striking and handling is going to be 10 minutes. Rising, whatever you call it, lifting, 5 minutes. Hand passing, 5 minutes. And then maybe hooking for 10 minutes. On a different night I might do blocking for 10. On a different night I might do tackling. So that will be my first 30 minutes, give or take. My second 40 minutes then, it's going to be a game. Now a game can take many, many different forms. You might have small-sided games for 10 minutes. You might do possession for 10 minutes. And then you might play full-sided for 20 minutes. Now I was looking at this today when I was just preparing a little bit of it, going back over it. And right now I don't like the look of it. When I look at that, if I was heading to the field tonight, I'd say, right, full-sided game, 20 minutes. And I'm not happy with that. I'd want maybe 30 minutes. So I might scrap the possession or the small-sided game, or I might pull that session from 80 minutes down to 90 minutes. So that's what I mean by, when you write it down and look at it, you get a better feel for it. And if you write it down the night before and you look at it a couple of times, you'll really get a better feel for it. So, okay, you have your session sorted. Next thing you got to think out, the layout of the pitch. Are there goals or posts to be set up? Are there cones to be set up? Who's going to do that? Are you responsible for that? Have you help? Are you lucky enough to have a bit of help to do it? Have you a coach that's working with you that can maybe do some of it? You know, are you going to do a little bit, and while you're doing that, your colleague is setting up for the next little exercise, and vice versa? You don't want any time wasting. That's hugely important. And you don't want to waste 5 or 10 minutes throwing out a few cones to move on to your next exercise. This actually it's a great way of involving a new coach, you know, or maybe mentoring a new coach that might take over the team the following year for you. That if you involve 2 or 3 people helping you out there, setting up parts of the training, and maybe they're driving them on, and you overseeing them. I'm a great believer in, you know, if you have a management team of 3 or 4 people, that everybody gets involved. You know, obviously one person will take the lead, but the others are driving it on, and they're watching the players, and they're watching for various things. So on that one there, obviously I have 40 and 30, 70 minutes in an 80-minute session, but you're going to lose 10 minutes somewhere along the line, going between exercises or even having breaks. That's going to happen. Looking at the pitch then, you know, it does make sense that you visualize before you go to the session how that session is going to pan out. How is your pitch going to be laid out? I mean, if you're going to have, in the game part of your session, if you're going to have 5v5, let's say you have 30 players, well then you're going to have a third of the pitch. You're going to need goals on the sidelines, and you have 10v10 at one end, 10v10 at the other end, and 10v10 in the centre. Now, if you're going into smaller games, you're going to need more goals. Are you going to use goals? Are you going to use cones? Are you going to use poles? That doesn't really matter, but you need to know how that field is going to look before you hit the field. I have a couple of water bottles in there in the centre, because recovery is very, very important. And hydration is very, very important. And if you think about it, if you have a car, and it could be the finest car in the world, but if you don't put petrol or oil into it, it's going to break down. So if you don't allow ample recovery and ample hydration, your players are going to fatigue very, very quickly, and your session is not going to be as it could be. In this day and age, I suppose it makes sense maybe to get the players to bring their own water or whatever they're drinking. It's giving them a little bit of self-responsibility, and you know, it's probably, when we get through this crisis we're in at the moment, it's probably going to be something that's going to be top of the list, that we're not sharing bottles. So personal responsibility is always something that's good to give players. Right. So the next thing then, what are we going to coach? You know, what do we do? We're going to the field, we're going for a week, we're going for a night. What are we going to coach? But to me, it's pretty clear. The game of hurling is pretty simple, really. And the game is by far the most important. And if it did nothing, only went down to the field and played a game, a good game, well, to me, that's a good session. And many a team has done nothing else, only play games in training and they've been very, very successful. Sometimes we overcoach, sometimes we overdrill. Now, having said that, if you don't have the skills, you can't play the game. So if your players can't strike both sides, you know, you got to work on that. Either they work on it in their own time, or you got to work on it during training. So you need the skills to play the game. So we have to learn the skills. And how do you learn those? We learn them by drills. I mean, a drill is, sometimes people are frowning on the word drill, but I don't frown on it. Two players pucking a ball to each other is a drill. Pucking a ball against the wall is a drill. So, you know, you need the drills to learn the skills. Now, with the skills, again, you get it right first. In particular, if it's a difficult skill. Let's say it's blocking or hooking, very, very complex. Even adult players sometimes don't have it right. So if you get it right first, even in slow motion, then get it faster and faster and faster, and finally get it fast under pressure. And at all times then, being mindful of what age group you're coaching. So, you know, all your coaching should be age appropriate. Are you working the nursery? Are you working the youth? Are you working the adults? So that's hugely important. Now, moving on. Components of the game. If I never coached a hurling team, if I never saw a hurling match, and I was starting with a team next week, and I went to a game, what would I see? Let's say I was like an experienced coach, maybe in some other code, and I go to my first hurling match. Well, obviously, I'm going to see skill. I'm going to see that there are certain skills in this game. I'm going to see fitness. You know, without fitness, strength, etc., and fitness brings a lot with it. You know, what is fitness? I've just listed a few there: speed, strength, agility, etc. That's part of it. So we got to look at that. And then I suppose a new person will look out and say, right, there's a team, there's 15 players there. How do they work together? Where do they stand? Where do they go? So that's an area. Are there tactics? And then I suppose in every sport, there's the mental side of it. And can we coach it? Can we work on it? Well, we have to. You might have a player that's hugely skillful, but if he goes down 4 or 5 points in a game, he might switch out of the game. Whereas you might have another player that could be down 10 points and they're still going as strong. So these kind of things are all part of the game. Components of the game is just what I'm calling them now. Then you look at the skills of the game. And what are they? You know, how many are there? Well, who knows? Are you just going to go to the field from night to night, or are you going to plan what you're going to do in the skills? Are you going to plan when you're going to do it? So if I throw up here what I might call standard skills, now you've seen those already, Magnificent 7. I think it's pretty reasonable to say that they are pretty well accepted as the main skills of hurling. And are you going to practice them? Are you going to practice them regularly? So let's call those standard skills. However, there are what I might call the not so obvious skills. And I've just fired a few up there on the slide. You know, pick out a few. Holding your ground, is that a skill? Certainly is. Reading the game, is that a skill? Of course it is. When to pull, when not to pull, when to flick a ball, and a few more. Not so obvious skills. Puck outs, huge skill. Forwards moving or not moving, backs moving or not moving. Taking on backs. So these are all little bits. Fast delivery, is that a skill? In my book, it is a skill, you know. When to deliver fast, when not to deliver fast. But if you were out in the backs and you got a ball and you have a quick look up the field and you see a player maybe one-on-one, 50, 60, 70 meters away, to have the ability and to have the vision to land that ball up very, very quickly, that's the huge skill. 2 players going up for the same ball, that's a disaster. So, you know, we could go on and on with this list, but that's just to get you thinking. So, coming back to the session again, what I would suggest is you examine the components of a training session. You know, what exactly happens in a training session. So again, I've just put a little list there of what, in my experience, most training sessions comprise of. There's going to be an element of skills and drills, formals, if you want to call it. There's going to be an element of tactics, analysis. Now, when I'm speaking about a training session, it might be on the field, it might be off the field. But to me, a training session is when you have the players. So if a player only has 3 hours a week to give you, or 4 hours or whatever, you got to use that time to the best advantage of your team. So as I said, tactics, analysis, that might be done off the field. Talking. We do a lot of talking. You're listening to someone doing a lot of it now. Some coaches talk too much on the pitch. Again, you're looking at one of them. Well, you're not, you're listening to them. Psychology, speakers. Some people are into it, some people are not. S&C, which used to be known as fitness. It's a huge element of training. And again, it could be separate, off running somewhere, it could be in the gym, but again, it eats into the time that a player can give you in training. There are what's known as condition games, which are, I suppose, set pieces that you're working on some part of your game that needs to be worked on. And then there's their formal game, the formal match that we all understand, whether it's 15 aside or 10 aside, depending on the numbers you have. So, you know, it's up to you to decide what makes up a session and what are the priorities. But I would strongly suggest that you plan them accordingly. Now, I put a little task to a few friends of mine a couple of months back. They were looking after a senior adult team, okay. And I was chatting them about, you know, what exactly they do in training. And I gave them this sheet and it says, lads, look at, will you fill this out for me for 10 hours of training, which was broadly speaking a fortnight's training. And we were looking at a session being maybe an hour and a half. So I asked them to just write out in time, I didn't need detail, of how long they are spending on the different components. So let's say Monday night, how long are you spending on skills and drills, how long on fitness, how long on tactics, how long on psychology, how long on condition games, how long on match. And after all the sessions were put together and we totted up the time, I said to the lads, right, are you actually doing what you set out to do? You know, do you ever look back after a week or a month and say, whatever you think is most important, is that being done most? Is that being given most time? You know, does the training reflect your priorities? And some people don't know that because they maybe don't look back. They might look forward, but they don't look back. So what's coming up next here now is definitely not something I'm asking you to do, but it's something that might just trigger your mind, start thinking a little bit more. So I took that information that the three friends gave me and I put it into a little chart. So basically, we drew the pie chart to reflect the components of the training sessions that the lads had put together. And if I look at it here, it stands out on mine. Now I can't use the mouse here because my mouse will roll over one place and it'll look different on your chart. So, well, maybe I'll try, but I'm rolling over the green area here, but I think the mouse that you're seeing is probably rolling over somewhere else. So when I look at that chart straight away, I see a massive amount of time given to S&C or fitness, 40%. I look at a small amount of time, 15% given to match game. Now, am I happy with that? Well, it depends. It depends on the time of the year to me. If that chart was reflecting the 8-week grid or the 8-week plan that I showed you earlier, I'd be quite happy because that 8-week plan was early season. We didn't have lights and our players mightn't have been that fit. So the focus was to get them fit. So to see the major part of the pie there given over to fitness, I'm quite happy with that. Now, we'll chalk out another one here. So we changed around just the time, again, just to throw up a different chart to you. And when I look at this one, I see fitness at 25%. I see drills at 27%. So I see a match just at 8% in red. And I see condition games in orange there at 35%. I see no psychology and I see very little tactics at 5%. And I ask myself, am I happy with that? Again, depends on the time of the year. But really, I wouldn't be happy with that, I think, at any time of the year. Because we have condition games and we have skills. That's plenty of hurling, but very little match time. And at the end of the day, it's all about the game. Like the competitions that we train for are actually matches. They're not condition games. They're not skill competitions. They're matches, which are generally 15 aside. Okay, there could be 11 aside. And you learn the game by playing the game. So I wouldn't be really happy with that chart. I throw this one up and I have a look at it, and what hits me straight in the face is the red area, which is saying match 25%. So 25% of the time that I am given to training is being given over to a match, a formal match. That makes me happy. Then I look at almost another 25% given over to condition games, which are segments of a match. And I look at 20% given over to skills, drills, call them what you like. So from a hurling perspective, I'm very happy with that, especially if it's in the season and you're coming up to your games. Now, I look at a green section there, S&C fitness, just 10%. And you could say, hold on, that's, you know, the guys are going to lose fitness. Not at all. When you get into your hurling season, I always think fitness is hugely important, but I would build my fitness into skills, into drills, into condition games. And if you wonder what am I talking about, if you want to get hurling and fitness at the same time, but if you put one player standing in the goals, small goals can be made out of cones, and you put 2 players out the field, and you puck the ball out to them, and you let them hurl for a minute, 1v1, but that'll kill you. That's as tough a training as it can get. And after that minute, swap the goalie, and after another minute, swap the goalie. So you're getting your fitness in there, and you're also getting your hurling. So you never lose sight of the fitness element, but you build it into your training. So I would have, I suppose, a session. I would have maybe a workshop which would be fitness elements, how to build your fitness into your hurling. Okay. So anyway, that's looking at that chart in that way. And again, depends what you think is important. I'm just saying to you that what shows up on that chart should reflect what you want. Okay, I hope that makes a little bit of sense to you. Now, skills then, the skills part of training. You say to yourself, right, what are we going to do in skills? Okay, we have our components sorted out. We know how long we're going to give to the various things, but one of the biggest elements of the training, in my view, is skills. Have you ordered and prioritized the skills? Do you know what you're going to do, or are you just hitting and missing? Are you going to look back after a month's training and discover we haven't done any hooking, we haven't done any blocking, right? You know, we haven't done any ground hurling. And then maybe you lose a game by a couple of points because your players couldn't hook or they couldn't block, or a couple of your players had a chance to score a goal or maybe clear a ball with a ground strike and you haven't done it. So, you know, is it going to be haphazard, or are you really going to look into your sessions, look into your skill sessions and see, are we covering everything? Now, you actually can't cover everything. You will never have enough time to do everything you want in training. So again, you got to prioritize. And I'm a firm believer in, if you bring players to the field too often, they lose appetite. So even though in your head there's 1,000 things you want to do, there's 100 things you want to do every night, you can't do them because the players lose freshness. So you got to keep prioritizing. So what I'm throwing up to here is a little snippet of the skills element of your training. If you look at all your skills, we looked at the Magnificent Seven, but each of those can be further expanded into so many more skills. If we look at striking alone, the striking right and left, the striking from your hand, the striking from the ground, the striking for distance, then the striking for accuracy. It's one thing to be able to puck a ball 70 meters, but can you puck at 70 meters to travel in between 2 poles 5 or 10 meters apart? The striking when you're on the run, the striking when your colleague is on the run, and that is not easy. So, you know, it's one thing, as I said, to be able to strike a ball 70 meters, but can I hit a ball 70 meters running at full speed to a player that's also running at full speed? So that's just honing in on striking. Are we covering all those aspects over our period of training? I can go on down through more of them. Even the slide is not big enough to take all the skills and the various aspects of the skills, but I hope you're getting the point. So again, I would challenge you to, not necessarily on paper, but definitely in your mind, to look at the skill element of your sessions and see how are you spending that time. Again, prioritize. Are there skills that just must be done every night? And to me, there are. Striking just has to be done every night, in my view. Raising the ball has to be done every night. You know, that's up to yourself. Certain things, okay, I wouldn't do hooking every night. I wouldn't do blocking every night. Touch every single night. Every single night I would do it. To draw a graph like this is impossible because so many of the skills overlap each other, which is good. I mean, if we're striking, we're catching. Well, we hope we're catching because we could be dropping. And there is the reason why we must work on it. So generally they go on twos, but you get my point that you're making certain that there isn't a gap. And again, in a club, you know, as your players move up through the ranks, there should be communication between coaches. You know, I don't like using the word should, but I'll use it. They should be doing maybe skills testing, either formally or informally by observing. And coach to coach should be able to say, right, there's 5 or 6 guys there passing from 16s to minors. They're weak on a particular side. So that should get a bit of focus. You know, you should know, can your players do the jab lift at speed? Can they do the roll lift running away from a ball? So if they can't, that should be factored in. It should be maybe recorded in your club as the players pass from coach to coach. So again, I hope you know what I mean there. Now, what you can do is, I wouldn't in the slightest expect you to be logging all this stuff on the computer and doing graphs up. But what can be done very, very simply, if you want to, I'm just checking the clock here, and I just noticed I forgot to let it go. So I have no idea how long I'm working here, but it will just keep going. Damien will probably cut in on me after a while and say, Martin, he'll cough her once or twice, and that'll mean there's only 2 hours left. Anyway, to record what you're doing, let's say it's the components of the game. If you get a simple sum copy or a maths copy and write out your components, and let's say every little square is 10 minutes. So if you spend 30 minutes on something there, you fill in 3 little blocks. And, you know, so if I look at my top one there, I don't know if I'm pointing to it, I see after whatever, 2 months or a month, skills and drills, yellow. That's what I spend most time on. Tactics, not much. Fitness, green area, fair bit. I look back at my match, not a lot. So am I happy with that? Very, very easy. 5 minutes after a session, we'll do that on an all maths copy. A handier little one maybe is the one below, where we make little boxes, and each box is 6 squares. Each square is 10 minutes. So when you have a box completed, it's an hour. So you come back after a month, and you have a quick look at your maths copy, and you see, right, skills, I've given almost 4 hours to it. Tactics, I've given whatever, an hour and a half, and you see then how you're moving along. So as I said, I don't expect you to fill the like of that out, but you should have some idea, I think, in your own mind. So anyway, that brings us to, I suppose the best part in any course, which is the tea time. And I firmly believe that every course, you know, when you stop for tea, that's when the real learning happens. You chat your colleagues, maybe you chat your enemies, you chat your rivals, but you swap phone numbers, you arrange challenge matches, you maybe share a few tactics, and it's a real good time. So I suppose we can't really have the tea here now tonight, even though we're trying to pretend that this is real, and we can just have I suppose a virtual cup of tea. But Dara and Damien, I just brought on a few bits here, because usually when I go up to Connacht there, up around Sligo, the boys are all spoiling me there. There I have an eclair there for you, and I have one for Damien. And I just had a little cup of tea here myself. So we'll move on now to the next part. Normally we'll say, right lads, we'll give you 10 minutes there, and we'll see you down the pitch and bring your hurdles. So we're moving in now to the practical element of tonight. And again, I'm a firm believer that if you hone in on these tactics, on these skills, and you work on them, you will not be going too far wrong. And what you're going to see is relevant for under 12s, as relevant for inter-county seniors. At this point in time, I'd like to acknowledge the thanks of my good friends Brian Ryan in Kilkenny and PJ Ryan and Sean Kelly, who are coaches down there, for helping out with getting all these drills together. And John Harrington, who works with me in Crow Park. John did all the camera work and spent hours and hours and hours sorting out these videos. And I suppose the only thing I could say against John is Tipperary, man. And we let him into Nolan Park before the All-Ireland last year to do this bit of video, and I'm not so sure whether he left something behind or took something away, but it possibly cost us the All-Ireland. But anyway, all joking apart, a lot of work was put into this by John. We didn't practice the drills in advance. The players you're going looking at are Kilkenny under 15s, and we left in the mistakes on purpose, just to show that these guys are pretty decent hurlers. However, like everybody, they make mistakes, and there's no point in having drills and skills that are perfect. And I hope when you watch and look in here that you'll notice, you know, balls being dropped. If you drop a ball in a drill, it's no big deal. If you drop a ball in a match, it can cost you a game. And so if you hone in on them and see how you might use them. Now, in the current climate, you know, in the situation we find ourselves in now, we're hoping that, well, it will happen at some time that we have a get back to play, which is probably going to be progressive. Like injury, you know, you take a graded return. So when a player is injured, they take a graded return to play. For our games to get up and running again, I'm presuming it'll be a graded return. Everything we're showing you here tonight, I think, would be ideal for that graded return, because I think all of these skills we're going to show you can be done with less than 8 players. Some of them, many of them, can be done with 2, and distances are going to be as long as you want them to be. So might be no harm to hone in on them and see what you think. So we'll just run this little one now. I just want to cut myself out of it at the start. Okay, I'm voicing over these, folks, so you might need to turn up your sound a little bit more. So just sit back now and we'll see what we got here for a few minutes.
Indeed, every aspect of raising the ball is hugely important and should be practiced continually. Two-handed lifts, one-handed lift, the jab lift, the roll lift, a moving ball, a stationary ball. Rising with the heel of the hurl, as some of these players are doing, is not ideal and can be very costly. Sometimes a player will miss the ball, so it's very good practice to coach them in retrieving and coming back. They when miss the ball, they run back, pick it and go back. Hand passing at various distances, even up to 30 or 40 metres, both stationary and on the move, is an essential skill and is often neglected. Proper technique is important. Some of the players here are actually throwing the ball, or at least will be blown for throwing and should change their technique. Here the players are striking, various striking high ball, striking low ball, striking to the hand or striking to the feet. Again, it's an essential skill and players should continually work off both sides and vary the distance. Running towards the ball, whoever is coming to meet the ball, working on your touch, again is an essential skill. This is a variation on rising, striking and hand passing. Players are also working on movement and evasion. Exercises like this can be ideal for warm-up, but again, every training session should probably have an element of rising and catching. Lines of 4, hurling on the ground, is one of the oldest drills in the book and is hugely beneficial. It is excellent for coordination, sharpness, getting your eye in, and even for fitness. The end players control and strike the ball as quickly as possible, whereas the middle players move towards the ball and keep the ball moving. You can then move along to striking from the hand, again where players move from side to side, and you can even mix both skills where the first player pulls on the ground and the second player lifts it, carries it and strikes. And it can also be transferred into a shooting drill, as the players are doing here. Player 1 strikes the player 2 feeds player 3, and player 3 strikes for a point. Striking is one of the key skills of the game, and there are so many different types of strike that you just probably need to work on some element of it in every training session. So here we have the players striking right and left at various distances and various types of striking. Striking to the hand, striking to the feet, hopping the ball on the ground. You can just build it up over a period of time that they're getting experience at all levels of striking. Moving towards the ball, stepping to the side before they strike the ball are also little skills that should be built into your training. So here we have the players moving towards the ball as they would in a game, because if they don't, their opponent is going to get the ball before them. Players are now working on long striking. And this is an essential skill also, that you strike a ball as far as you can, and built into that is catching. So players are working on striking as far as they can, getting a good position, catching the ball and returning it. This is a variation on long striking, where two players are working together. One catches the ball and hand passes to his partner, and his partner then drives it as far as he can down the field. It works on teamwork, it works on vision, it works on laying a ball off to your teammate when you're under pressure yourself. Again, I would like these players to be striking longer. Players in this exercise are attempting to run at maximum speed, collect a ball that is moving to them at pace, and without breaking stride, deliver the ball back down to the far end of the field. It's extremely difficult. It's one little error and the drill will break down. In a game, if a player doesn't go at top speed to the ball, his opponent will get there before him. If his touch lets him down, his opponent will win the ball, and if he slows down to strike, his opponent will hook him. Here we have players hand passing a ball at a close distance, but they're moving around the field. This replicates a game, and the distance should be increased over a period of time. Players here are moving around the field, striking the ball to each other. Ideally, one player makes a breakaway, looks for the ball, and his colleague tries to strike the ball straight into his hand. Players initially start reasonably close, but as time moves on, they get further and further and further away, so that eventually they're possibly striking 50, 60 and 70 metres accurately. A variation on striking in trees can be, instead of striking to the hand, you strike low on the ground into a player's pat. Again, replicate maybe a forward moving onto a ball and picking it up at pace. Before hooking and blocking, players must have a good control and use of their hurl and also footwork. A hurl that is not too heavy and not too short will produce best results. So this little exercise works on handling the hurl, works on a little bit of movement, and is an introduction to hooking and blocking. Hooking itself is best practiced initially without a ball, even in slow motion, to develop good technique. Using one hand produces the best results. Even adult players might never have practiced hooking, so they might try this. Some of these skills are as relevant for an adult as for an under 5 player. Blocking is all about keeping your eye on the ball and having good control of your hurl. Start slowly, with the striker making it easy for the blocker initially, and then making it harder as technique improves. Coaches can come up with their own exercises to practice these techniques. Using a soft ball initially is often good practice, as the fear of getting hit with a leather ball can sometimes cause the player to turn away from the slitter instead of keeping their eye on it. This is a very difficult exercise that works on striking, catching, hand passing, support and timing the run. Ideally, the players are moving at maximum speed to replicate a game. However, it is not as easy as one might think, and the slightest mistake will result in the drill breaking down. In a game, that generally amounts to losing possession or missing a scoring opportunity. 7 players is the ideal number for this exercise. It will not be suitable for players that haven't mastered the art of striking, catching, handling the ball. So you can see from this exercise that depending on the level of ability your players have, whether you decide to do it or not. There are some variations then to the same exercise, initially running straight down the field. Then a variety can be the attacking players run diagonally across in front of the player with the slitter. Again, trying to replicate situations that might arise in a game. The player in the centre can knock down the ball, and on this occasion the players are working on getting in for a break, raising the ball, continuing on, and maybe even taking a score. If you have 14 players, ideally you'd set up 2 grids. If you have 21 players, you set up 3 grids so that players are getting plenty of activity and not standing around too much. This is a nice little exercise for sharpening up players, particularly in the lead up to maybe a big game. Players are working on short striking with both sides. They're working on handling, laying off the ball and touch. They're also working on interval running, that is, changing pace as they show for a pass, which is a very good form of physical training. The idea is to strike to the blue cones and then run diagonally to the red to receive a pass. So in a game, when you're looking for a pass, you don't run up to the player with the ball, you run out to the side of him. There are variations in this exercise also. Initially, players can strike to the hand, then they can strike to the feet, and then they can also hand pass. So it's up to coaches again to vary the drills to suit their own needs, to suit the standard of their players. Here is another exercise that again works on striking, handling the ball, timing the run, and looking for a layoff at maximum pace. Again, it is not easy, because if there is a deficiency in any of the skills involved, the drill will break down. What we're looking for here is first player strikes long, the second player times his run and comes at maximum speed to take a layoff, and would then continue on maybe towards the goals to take a shot. If a player runs too early in a game, he's going to bring an opponent with him, and it is pointless. If the player's striking ability is not up to the standard, they just can't do this drill. If their handling ability is not up to the standard, they can't do it either. So you've got to gauge the standard of your players when using this exercise.
Now, folks, we hope that you got something out of that in the drills end of it. Again, there's nothing too difficult really there. Damien, you have been worked in with nursery right up to All-Ireland club champions. do you want to make any quick comment on those few skills there?
No, Martin. Next Monday night there we have our nursery presentation, as you have advertised there. So we're looking forward to people engaging again. And again, it's not just for children up to under 6. It's for anyone who is a child coach. So anyone coaching 6, 8s, 10s or 12s, it'll be valuable information there next Monday night for those.
Dara, when you were working with Sligo seniors, you know, those skills and drills we had there, were there any of them that you might have focused in on?
Well, Mason, even just watching that, I can see drills that I used with an inter-county senior team, but only modified slightly to use with an under-10 club hurling team. I guess the skills don't change, Martin, is the point. They all need to be practiced right through and practiced regularly if they're to be perfected, I guess.
Yeah, well, that would be the emphasis, folks. You know, again, going right back to it. I remember the All-Ireland semi-final there a couple of years ago. An inter-county player missed a jab lift. A Clare player missed a jab lift in front of the goals, and a Galway player ran in behind him, picked up the ball and put it over the bar. The game was a draw, and Galway won the replay. So you could say Clare lost the chance. I think it was Clare, actually. They lost the chance of getting to an All-Ireland final for the sake of one jab lift. But anyway, we're not too bad in the clock, lads. We'll take a few minutes now if Damien and Dara, if they have any questions to put out to us here, we can take them, and if we haven't any questions, that'll be fine as well. Just before we move on to that, just to look in at what's on your screen there, the nursery next week, the nursery values and guidelines. Peter Horgan there for the last number of weeks, he's had some very eminent coaches, international coaches, and they're being given some very, very important messages. And looking at Damien's messages for next week, they're very, very similar. So I would encourage you to maybe contact people in your clubs that you might think would get interested in hurling. You know, we're always talking about recruiting. Now is an opportunity. Pick up the phone, make a call or two, and recommend to somebody to look in on this next week, because it'll certainly give them a flavour of what maybe they might be getting involved in. And if they were ever thinking of going on to a foundation course and a level 1 course, in particular foundation, to look in next week at Damien, they won't be sorry, I put it that way to you. Just one other point. We'll send out a link for registration tomorrow. So anybody that has registered already, you'll get an email. If you've come in tonight through the back door, in other words, you haven't registered, I won't be able to send you information on registration. So if you want to get information on it and a facility to register, you might send me an email, and you can see my email address down there on the bottom. So Damien and Dara, I'll just stop sharing here now, and if there are any questions there, we can take a few. We're not too bad in the clock, Damien, are we?
No, we're doing great, Martin. Fair play to you.
Fastest you ever got me.
I have a question here that might start us off, Martin. It's a bit of a two-part question, really, but it's come in from Kevin in Dublin, who's involved with an under-13 group in Dublin. Luckily enough, they have 3 hurling teams, I assume at that grade. They have them for an hour every week, as the other session is given to football. And the question is, how do you suggest that session can be broke down when they're also trying to include games and the fun aspect? That's one part of it. The second part is that at certain times of the year, they're in a small all-weather or half an all-weather pitch, so space is quite tight. How can you overcome that and still get a good skills session in?
Yeah, Dara, I'd answer that by just thinking back to a year or two ago. I was up in Belfast, and it was in the winter, and I had a small little AstroTurf, and what I saw was brilliant. Youngsters there around that same age group, and again, roughly, they were working on an hour, and their first half hour was skills, and they had the skills worked in what I would call little stations. So the players were working on a station for maybe 5 minutes, and then on the whistle moved on to the next, and plenty of help. And again, you know, they had plenty of coaches who maybe maybe weren't qualified in any description, but they were standing at a station and they were encouraging children maybe to pull on a tire or whatever little skills they were doing, or striking, whatever, depending on the distance. And on the half-hour mark then, I'd say it took about 3 minutes to set up little pitches. And away they went then into little 3-a-side, 4-a-side or 5-a-side games across the pitch. Part of it was all on the ground and then part of it was rising. So I would always kind of look at the same thing and say, right, break up your session into 2 sections, half for the skills and half for the games. And I think that's the best way going forward. Now, I would also try and encourage your children that when they go home, they're going to pick up the hurl out in the backyard and out against the wall, down on the green, wherever, with their family or with their friends. Because if you can sell that to youngsters, that they're going to go off their own bat down to the local park and play 3 goals and in, or play 1v1 or whatever, or have a few pucks, but then you're home and dry. That's the key to it. And if we ever wanted an example in Dublin, we had Coola there a couple of years ago. You know, if we went back 10 years ago, hurling wasn't that popular in Coola. They had some great hurlers, of course they had, but it wasn't that popular. But in the recent years, children were seen walking around the streets in Coola with hurls in their hand, and that's what they managed to do. So I hope that answers that question, Dara.
Yeah, there's another question in here, Martin. Age-related coaching priorities from Dublin, or from David there in Dublin. How do you benchmark players' skills at under 8s, 10s and 12s?
Well, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can do it formally, and there are several skills tests out there. Brian Ryan there in Kilkenny and the lads have developed a little app for it, which is on your mobile phone, and the coach can basically record the skills as they're doing them. But I mean, anyone can set up a little skills test. How long can you strike on the right? How long can you strike on the left? You know, bring a bit of accuracy into it. How many lifts can you do in 30 seconds, etc., etc. So that is the straightforward way of doing it. You record it, and then maybe a month's time you test them again. I think it's good practice in a club. If, let's say, on the first Saturday in every month at, we'll say 10 o'clock, there will be somebody down in the field to skills test anyone that wants to be skills tested, because there's no point in skills testing if players don't go back and try and improve. That's the key to it. So formally is one way of doing it, but maybe in particular with your older players, you mightn't get them into formal skills testing. But I think you're not really doing your job right if you're not sharp and you're not watching your players. How far can your players strike? So you have a drill there or a skill, and it's called what I might call long striking. And let's say you put your players from 21 to 21, and you give the first few minutes striking off the right, second few minutes striking off the left. So you should see very, very quickly who can strike 60 meters, 70, 80, or more importantly, who can't. And you got to hone in on that player or those players and get them more than likely or most beneficially in their own time to actually hone in on those skills. Because again, if you're going to throw me into corner back and I can only strike a ball 50 meters as an adult player, well, I'm not going to clear midfield. I'm certainly not going to clear the other half back line. And, you know, players on opponents are going to tag into that very, very, very quickly. So again, 2 ways, Damien, formally or informally.
Thanks, Martin. Just another one. I'm probably asking the wrong man this now, Martin, but do you rigidly track time with a stopwatch during your training sessions?
Damien, I give it up because I forget to start it and I forget to stop it. Like tonight now, look, I brought an old stopwatch here tonight just for you, and I forgot to start it. So I try and keep an eye on my watch on my wrist, and I have 2 things in my head. When does the match start? When does the game part of the session start? So if we're training at 7 o'clock and we're going to train till 8:30, I want the match to start, we'll say, at 7:45. So I'm religiously watching that. So no matter what is going on, once 7:45 comes, we'll stop and we're going into the game, because I think the game is the most important part of the session. Now, other than that, I suppose I've got a feel for it over the years, that I would have it on my little slip of paper, you know, that I'm doing striking for 10 minutes. I'd have a reasonable feel for 10 minutes, and I'd throw that out, look at the watch. But if I had somebody else to actually be more accurate with the stopwatch, I probably would use them. But again, in answering, unfortunately, no. I practice or I preach a lot of things, but don't practice them.
Just before Dara comes in there, Martin, and thanks very much. Skill drills on YouTube. A lot of questions coming in. Where can some of those videos be accessed?
Those ones, Damien, are all up on YouTube, and ones we'll be using in part 2. I suppose the handiest thing, if you put in my name and drills, you'll get it, and you get a preview to part 2 of this webinar, which is going to focus in on games. So they're up there, and in fact, YouTube is a great place. If you type in any of the coaches, Paddy Butler, a great man, has a huge amount of stuff up there. Several of the inter-county players, if you Google their names and just put drills beside them, you'll be very surprised if you don't get quite an amount of good examples.
Martin, something that always comes up when you're going around the country, I suppose, certainly when you come up to us here, is the young fella or even the senior hurler that wants to pick the ball up with one hand or goes and repeatedly picks it up with one hand. There's a question in relation to that. Would you recommend one-handed or two-handed lifting for young players? We probably all know the answer, but another way of asking that question is the one-handed outlawed?
Well, Dara, sometimes guys going with one hand will break my heart. But funny enough, I would coach the children even at whatever age, as soon as they're some level of hurling. That could be 6, there could be 26, but let's say it's 10 or 12. I'd have them practice every way. I'd be encouraging them most of the time to go with two hands. And again, bearing in mind the conditions, the pitch, the time of the year, and I'll be trying to show them that, one hand is dangerous a lot of time. If the pitch is not good, it's very dangerous. But I wouldn't ever insist on it. I'd have them practicing with the one hand, I'd have them practicing with the two hands, because when the opportunity comes, they got to be able to do it. Even with ground striking. And again, in Kilkenny, in schools hurling for a lot of my life, ground hurling was almost insisted on. But it didn't mean you had to do it, but it meant you're sending your players out and you're saying, if it doesn't come up the first time, you whip it off on the ground. So again, Dara, to answer it, I try and coach them into every skill, but then I would focus in on what I would call good practice. Even at inter-county senior, I often see a player going back towards his own goals with one hand. The slightest little error, slightest little nudge from his opponent, slightest little hole in the ground, and that could be a goal. Where some of the really good players, if you watch them, I don't want to name them because I have a few in my mind, they go back towards the goal, they go down over the ball with their two hands. They might lose a little bit of pace, but worst scenarios, they'll be knocked over the ball.
There are a couple of questions put together, Martin, on planning for a session. Someone asking about whether and how, I guess, best laid plans and all that can be thrown into chaos, and do you have to allow for that, I guess? And number two, is it okay for the coach to take out that piece of paper and look at it in the middle of the session, or does he need to have this off in his head?
Oh man, well, first of all, Dara, certainly the best laid plans often go out the window, and I would say don't be afraid of that. It's like going into a dressing room in a match. To me, it's no climb down to go in at half time in a game and you're down 10 points and say to the players, lads, I don't have a clue how we're going to get out of this hole. You don't have to be pretending to know it all. And equally so with the session. I personally would regularly pull out a sheet of paper, because again, I think I know what I'm doing next, but I want to be sure. So, you don't have to pretend. If you pretend to players, they'll pick up on it very, very quickly. Whereas if you're yourself, I think you will get far more respect from players. And okay, the coach is the coach, the manager is the manager, the players are the players. But I would also seek the opinion of players regularly. Why wouldn't you? Because they're the guys that are doing the business on the field for you. They're the most important people in the whole setup. So I would regularly ask them how they felt the session. I mightn't agree with them. I might argue with them, but I would ask them. Even during a game at half time, especially some of your more established players, to me it's no climb down to say, Mikey, Peter, what do you think? How do you see it from where you are? because they're the guys that are on the field. And if you think you know everything, I suppose you've lost it. Whereas somebody gave me a good quote one time was, a man's greater knowledge is in his awareness of his own ignorance. So hopefully that answers that, Dara.
Good, Martin. I've one there from friends of ours there in South Galway, to do with characteristics of good management, Martin, and coaching, as opposed to, we've highlighted the skills there a lot tonight. So they're just looking for an answer there on the standard characteristics of good management and coaching.
Well, Damien, you tell the Galway boys nothing, okay? So we'll pass on that question.
The South Galway lads are all right, Martin.
All right, okay. Look at characteristics. Funny enough, looking at some of the material, Damien, that you're going to be working on yourself next week, and again, you're focusing in on we'll say nursery. It's amazing the amount of characteristics that are relevant, not only for nursery that you will be coming up with, but for inter-county seniors. And without listing them, you know, talking to your players, knowing their names, using their names, not trying to know it all, having time for everybody, being honest with a player. I mean, honesty is very, very important. There's no point in telling your number 27 that, you know, you have a good chance of being picked. You're better off to tell that number 27, listen, you're putting in a good effort. That's if he is putting in a good effort. You know, you weren't on the sheet to come in the last day, but your aim has to be maybe to try and get up into the top 5 subs. And if you get into the top 5, you have a chance of coming on. I think it is important that you're very, very honest, but treating players with respect, treating, you know, a word for everybody. I was up in County Meath there a couple of years ago, and I was asked to go up and observe development squad coaches and give them a bit of feedback after. Now, they didn't know me at the time, and I was up early and I had a cap on me and I just rambled in around the pitches, and we had a little discussion afterwards. And the one thing that stood out a mile for me, I mean, the coaching is coaching, and one guy is as good as the next. But what stood out a mile for me was at one pitch, when the coach arrived, he was arranging his stuff little by little. And as every player arrived, how are you, Jimmy? How are you, Mikey? How are they all down in such a place? He had a word for every single player. And for me, that was the take home. So it's not that you have to mollycoddle players, it's not that you have to be everything to them, but it is important that the coach, the manager, the management, I would have a rule of thumb that if there's 3 of us over a team, that, you know, a fortnight doesn't pass without somebody having had some word for every player. Simple as that. And that could be a clap on the back in the dressing room going in or coming out. It could be how it's going, how is this happening. I think that's important. Okay. Very
good, Martin. Joe Carberry there has a question about the Kilkenny app. Now, our good friend Brian Ryan was central to the development of that. Would you give information on that? It's called the Hurler, Martin.
Yeah, well, look, at the best thing Joe can do there is maybe send me a direct email and I'll put him in contact with Brian. But very, very simply, it's it's a tremendous idea, and the lads put a huge amount of work into it. And I'm not going to start explaining it for Brian, but we've all had, we'll say, paper skills testing, where, you know, you have X amount of skills and you write down the results for your players. Whereas Brian and the lads that have brought it onto the little app, and quite simply, you put your list, you put your team in on it, you put your players in on it, and whenever they want to be tested, to do their test, and they record their result, which is very, very quickly to do, and those results are all compiled and the coach can see all his results. Now, as well as that, he can get a comparison from it with how clubs in other counties are. Now, he won't see the results of the other clubs, but he'll get a comparison that if my club is Erin's Own, and I can say, well, Jenny, my guys striking, they're a little bit off of the average in the county. And as well as that, then they have numerous, we'll say, resources on the app. So best thing there for Joey is said, send me an email and I'll put him in direct contact with Brian.
Very good. Gary there has a question. Does Martin see COVID being a barrier to tips 2 in a row?
Ah, good man. Well, look, I have to be careful now with what I say here, but it'd be a devil if the tip buys, lads. It'd be a devil if you get to 2 in a row without pucking a ball. For God's sake, at least toss for the old thing, all right? I hate to see you going for 3 in a row next year without having poked the ball this year.
Go ahead there, Dara.
Yeah, just to note for everyone still listening that on the Q&A feed there, Colin has been kind enough to put up a link to the YouTube video of Martin's skills there, so you can copy it there or you can click on it and it'll bring you straight to it, because an awful lot of people that have got in touch have been asking can they watch that skills video back after. Just a question here from Malachy and Ballycran as well, Martin. For juveniles, would you focus on one skill each session, or would you try to do a few different skills in each session?
I do a few, Dara. I do a few. I mean, you gotta, again, think of yourself. If you're now in hurling yourself, Jenny, man, you normally be just doing the one thing for the night. So I think, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, depending on what it is. Like if you take the 3 opposite 3 there that we were looking at earlier, Jenny, if you had 5 minutes on that full belt, you're fairly flagged out. So you want to be moving on to something else. So definitely, I have a variety. But again, I've said it already, I'd be hugely strong on trying to get the players to do those things in their own time. And I know, you know, so many good players that I've known over the years, the amount of time they spend, I'm not saying in the field on their own, you know, with a friend, a couple of them coming down, that's where the difference is made. I've often heard when I was teaching somebody say, everybody gets the same chance in the classroom. The difference is what they do at home. And it's the same in hurling. You know, everybody comes to the field for the hour and a half, but it's the players that go back and get onto the wall or go down to the field in groups or pairs or whatever. That's where the difference is made. And make no mistake about it, that goal that Seamus Callan scored. And again, I look at it in envy and admiration in equal amounts. And, you know, I know for certain that Seamus goes to the field regularly and practices striking ground. That didn't happen by chance. And, you know, Dublin, I forget the guy that got it, but you'll see it in part 2 of this. Dublin got a similar brilliant goal against Kilkenny a couple of years ago, but it doesn't happen by chance, lads. Now, there's still quite a few people logged in here, lads, so I'm not in any rush off, but people, if they feel they need to go, slip away, you can, but there's quite a few people still there, Damien, so I'm happy enough to hang on there, depending on how you're fixed.
Yeah, perfect, Martin. There's just 2 there. What tips would you give for a goalkeeper? So look at, I think on show 3, it's all about goalkeepers. Now that came in from Anonymous there, but there's a full show dedicated. So go ahead there, Martin. Yeah. Okay,
listen, tomorrow when we're sending out the registration for next week, I'll also be giving information that our 3rd one is going to be on goalkeeping. So this night, 2 weeks, this next week you're on, the week after we have a full session on goalkeeping, and I would say it's not to be missed. We have some expert advice coming in.
The other one there from Ballycran, Malachy and Ballycran, juveniles, would you focus on one skill per session, or would you try and do lots in one session?
We had that one already there. Dara, you asked that question.
My mistake, Martin.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, no worries, lads.
I do have another one here though, Martin, and it's particularly relevant at the minute. How do you get young lads and young girls in particular doing that work at home? Because that's all they can do at the minute. But you know, this is the time. I guess there's an opportunity for coaches now to increase the skill levels in their young players, for sure.
Yeah, well, look at Dara. It's not easy, and it's about creating a culture. What I would suggest, and definitely if we weren't in the current situation, the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to put on hurling nights for parents, and I'm speaking in particular parents that might never have hurled before, and you know, putting on little hurling nights, little fun nights for them, a little course where they actually get involved, and that they will go home then and do the little skills with their children is the best way. Now, the fact that you can't bring the parents together now, I'm certain that clubs could contact the parents and they could point them in the direction of a few skills and drills and encourage them to go out in the backyard or the back garden or whatever they have. And if they haven't a yard or a garden, pull back the table in the kitchen and poke away there. So that's what I would do. And you know, I actually think now is a good time to maybe get people actually doing that kind of stuff. And I have recollections of several parents that maybe weren't native of Kilkenny and, you know, wondering what to do with their children. And you do what I've just said. You show them the few little skills and drills. And again, you know, we can point them to little YouTubes that are showing little nursery things and little skills and drills that they might tackle, okay?
Related to that as well, I guess, when we do get back together, is in terms of expectations for coaches at different levels, particularly the question relates to under 8s, under 9s, under 10s. You know, when do you introduce the various skills, and when do they need to be really demonstrating good ability with them?
Well, I'd introduce them. I'd always start them on the ground. I'd start them with ground hurling, and I'd absolutely haunt them with ground hurling when they're starting out, that to become proficient right and left on the ground. And, you know, what frustrates me sometimes is seeing, I won't even say youngsters, because there could be teenagers that haven't hurled much or played camogie much, and they're insisting on rising. Now, if you handed them a ball, some of them, they're not able to strike it, but they're still insisting on rising. And I try to get the message across to them, look, if you would strike everything on the ground for the moment, well, get good at that, you'll enjoy the game, you'll be part of the game, you could be quite good in the game. Now, there is rising and striking out of the hand, they have to work together. There's no point in rising the ball if you can't strike it out of your hand. So before you start rising a ball, especially in a match, you got to know you can strike it out of your hand. Other than that, it's pointless. It's only going to be blocked or hooked. So I would have them working on all the skills as soon as possible. As soon as they're pretty decent on the ground, I'll still have them practicing the rising. I'll still have them trying to puck out of their hand. So, you know, there is no age level on it. And even all the, we'll say, the player pathways that most counties have, which are excellent. And again, for new coaches, an excellent way of structuring how they might get, how they might bring their players through various levels. If you look at those, they're age related, but an age is just a guideline. It's really a level related. So you could have a 6-year-old that can strike right and left out of his hand or her hand. You could have a 14-year-old that can't do that. So you kind of work through the levels of skill that they're at. And actually, while it's in my head now, for those parents that you're wondering how to get them hurling with their children out in the yard and that, I think if we direct them to the GA Learning Planner, you couldn't get a better place to go. The GA Learning Planner, where they'll see all kinds of little exercises. Now, I would also say, and we're probably taking a bit of out of Damien's next week, but again, going on to the Connacht website, they're going to get plenty of little ideas there for total beginners and we'll say improvers, the nursery end and what I would call maybe the 10 or the 12-year-old. So between the Connacht website and the GA Learning, they will get loads of little ideas there to start their children hurling, okay?
Grand Martin, now just a question I have myself, Martin, just while we're waiting for a few more to come in. You mentioned there at the very start, not fouling being a skill. Now that's a really different way of thinking about it, and it's a really good way of thinking about it. Would you expand a little bit more on that, please?
Well, not fouling is a skill, because if you think about it, Damien, if you take maybe in Gaelic football and you're coming up the field with a ball and you're maybe 70 yards out, and I approach you, and I might just tug your arm, or I might just give you a bit of a shot into the chest to try and slow you down. And if the whistle blows in Gaelic football, that'll probably be a quick pass, maybe 5 or 10 or 20 meters. In hurling, it's a point. So the simplest little foul that really the player you foul mightn't even notice is you tug his jersey, you hold his arm. A score wasn't on. That player was not going to score. But once you pull that jersey, once you tug that arm, the whistle blows and you stand back 15 meters and he puts it over the bar. So I would challenge anybody to review, and we might do a webinar on it, but I would challenge anyone to review the last game, maybe last year that you were knocked out in, and go through it forensically and see, you know, most teams lose by 3, 4, 5 points. And if you go through that video forensically, I'd be surprised if you don't find 6, 7 or 8 little silly frees. And when I say a silly one, I'm talking about those little incidental ones that really don't even affect the opposition. And probably 3 or 4 of those were scored. So that's what I mean. So to have that discipline, right? You're revved up in the game, you're going into it strong, but you go in too strong, you push a player in the back. So to have the ability not to do that, to have the composure to say, right, Damien, you're to the ball before me. Okay, that's it. You're there before me. If I come up and jump up in your back, I'm giving you a point. But if I have the composure to get right up to you, even allow you to pick that ball and then try and block you or hook you, well, at least if you get a score, you're going to have to earn it. So that's kind of where I'll be coming at there.
Very good. Go ahead, Dara.
Sorry, Martin, the question's still coming in here. I'm just reading through a couple of them. A lot of people look for a way that they can watch back that video. Just to remind you that it's on YouTube, the skills one, and the link, Colin posted the link on the Q&A chat there, so you'll be able to access it there. Martin, do you think an overall club plan or strategy is vital to get skills embedded early in kids, and what term, in terms of duration, should a plan like that be?
Yeah, certainly would, Dara. Now, I wouldn't have a real tight plan for a club, but I think all the coaches in the club at the different ages in an ideal scenario would meet regularly. Now, when I say regularly, maybe every month, maybe every 2 months. And I think in an ideal scenario, you'd have maybe somebody that gets on well with all the coaches, a kind of a coordinator, maybe if you want to call him a coach, an officer, where all the coaches maybe sit down together and they feed in together and they discuss the skills and they discuss maybe the gaps. And, you know, they say, right, here's what we need to work on over a period of time. And, you know, let's say my team is bad at ground hurling, or my club, that we say, right, we're going to put an extra focus on that. And then this coach and officer might be able to slip down to most of the training sessions and say, guys, hold on, as a group, we agree to work on catching, or we agree to work a bit more on ground striking, but we're not doing it. That's the only way you're going to pull things through. Now, overall then, you know, the club, they should be observant as to what skills their players have, or more importantly, what skills they don't have. And, you know, if you're coming together regularly, let's say once a month, once every 2 months, and we're discussing, we're saying, lads, our striking has gone bad, or our catching is not where it's at. And then as a club, we go out and we work on that. I wouldn't have it too stringent, but at the same time, I'm probably saying that we try and make sure there are no gaps. For me to see maybe a minor player, you know, coming onto a squad, and you find that he or she can't strike on both sides, that's a disaster. And, you know, okay, you could say it's the player's fault, but it's equally so, it's the people that were over them over the years, that have been in the club maybe hurling from the time they were 10 or 12, and they're now 17 or 18, and they still can't strike on the two sides. So someone should have addressed that. So that's what I would say, yes. Now, not a stringent plan, but real tight observation and discussion with coach to coach. And in particular, if I'm taking on the team, Dara, that you had last year, that we have discussion and we look down through the players, and you have either verbally or written a little instruction for me on where the gaps are in various players, so that we can have a bigger picture and that we can try and fill those gaps. I mean, I have seen players go in at county level, very, very good players, that would have a gap, and the gap could be maybe they're at a hook. Now, whose fault is it? So that's, I hope, an answer for that question, Dara.
Just 2 more questions there, Martin. Cormac McPhillips there is on about the goalkeepers again, and how to get children started and teens interested in the position. But we might just remind Colm that on night 3, which is a fortnight's time, we have a full show dedicated to the goalkeepers that'll come up there.
Yeah, I mean, if Cormac, if he sends me an email, I'll send him a PDF of a poster there that we brought out last year on the goalkeeping for the start. So that might whet his appetite a little bit for a beginning. But definitely, I would say for the goalkeeping one, it's a must for coaches, all coaches and goalkeepers and prospective goalkeepers. So the young fellas won't have school in the morning, so maybe, you know, what's it now, 9:30? That'd be all right to watch it at 9:30, okay?
And then there's another one there, Martin, and we touched on it already there with Dara and tactics. But playing with a sweeper, what's your advice on that? And then playing against a sweeper.
Yeah, how long have we got there? I mean,
and that's another South Galway question, I think, Martin. These lads aren't going to bed down there at all tonight.
Yeah, well, look at this sweeper, like, is I'm not going to get into it in too much detail, but I mean, it's a term, I suppose, that has come in the last few years. You think years ago nobody ever sat back a bit. I remember, I don't know even what year, Kilkenny were playing and Frank Cummins was centre field and were playing against a gale force wind in the second half, and Frank sat back a bit and he was so strong and he caught ball and drove him up the field. Now, nobody ever called him a sweeper, but what people need to realise is, I think lads read into it too much, that if you're playing my team and you pull back a sweeper, well, automatically you're creating one at my end of the field as well. So, you know, it balances out. And it probably turns out then that, you know, whoever's there to play loose best is going to win. But I shouldn't be saying this now, but I think what happens, a lot of teams that will play a sweeper, they'll win games that they were probably going to win anyway. But then when they come up against a real good team, they'll probably find they pull back a sweeper, which means they're working 5 forwards on 6 backs. So the 5 forwards maybe don't have a hope against the 6 backs. And the good team, that where you have created an extra man at the back, they're probably going to go to town on you altogether. So the funny thing and the great thing about it is, you know, we never get to play the games twice. You know, you can't say, right, if we had to have a sweeper, we'd have won or we'd have lost, and if we hadn't. So it's that debate is going to go on forever. But I think if we let players play enough of games in training, you know, a guy goes forward, a guy goes back, you automatically learn how to deal with scenarios. And, you know, a player, let's say I'm in full back. Well, there's not a chance of it happening, but we pretend there was. There might be a situation where I might have to hurl on 2 fellas. So you have to do what you have to do. And if you play enough games in practice, that situation will happen. There might be, you know, play enough games, you'll get a maybe wing back. It might even only be a tennis-type game in your club, and a wing back gets a ball or a full back and he comes forward. So there's maybe 5 coming in on 4. And if you play that enough times in training, you're going to learn how to deal with it, which means you're going to have to hold your ground for a certain length of time. Then when the danger comes, somebody is going to have to go for the game and the player in possession, and the rest of the boys are going to have to filter around as the best they can to pick up the extra men. So I didn't answer the question, but I can't. Well,
you always told me, Martin, Kilkenny don't do tactics, so I believe you.
Well, I mean, they don't. Well, I never saw them anywhere. I was never let in on them. That was a funny one there, and anyway, no, pass on. Well, next question.
There's a 2-part question here, Martin, you might take a quick look at for us. Well, it's not 2 parts of a question, but it's 2 questions I've put together because I think they might be linked. How do you manage a group of mixed abilities? Do you keep the strong lads together, or do you mix them up? And another question that came in that might tie into it, can you give an example of a condition you'd put into a conditioned games? That came up on the slides.
Okay, right, mixed ability for a start. I'd have strong views on it. And again, having been a primary teacher for 38 years and having had mixed classes for all of those years, if you have a couple of students in a class, and let's say whatever age they are, one student finds it very hard to read and another student can read a book upside down. Now, if you put the 2 of them on the same book, you're not helping either. It's the same in maths. If you have a youngster that finds, we'll say, addition difficult, and you have another youngster and they can multiply 13 by 14 in their head, and you put them on the same stuff, neither of them will progress. Now in hurling, if you take even a club situation, and let's say you got a senior team, and the seniors and the juniors are going to be training together, and of course there's going to be tails. Now if you put your top players in a drill, and you have an I fall into that drill, let's say there's 5 lads there and they need 6, and I fall in as a 6th, that's a disaster. Because I'm going to be embarrassed, because I'm going to keep dropping the ball, slowing down the drill, and the 5 lads are going to be frustrated because I'm slowing it down. So we were far better off in getting in at your own level. You will learn more, you will progress more. Now, at the same time, I would squeeze players a little bit. You know, you're always nudging them a little bit ahead, but not too far ahead. In other words, you know, if I'm not anywhere near county standard and we're down in training and you put me in on the county player, it's a waste of time for him and it's a waste of time for me. So I hope that kind of answers that question. What was the second part of that, Dara?
The second one was on conditioned games and what sort of conditions you put in.
Yes, well, look at in part 2 of this, whenever it does happen, we'll be looking at that. But for example, if you had a scenario there where your forwards maybe were shooting on sight and wasting a lot of ball, okay? You know, a guy gets a ball from the corner flag and he has a shot. Well, you know, it doesn't go over the bar. The next ball is going to land down in the other square. So I might play a possession game there. It could be 5-on-5, 6-on-6, maybe inside the 45, where the whole purpose is just to keep possession. Now, you could have, if you wanted, if the backs get possession, maybe after 3 passes they can clear the ball. But if the forwards get possession, they must play it around. So a corner forward gets it, he plays it out to the wing forward, he plays it across to the far side to play it in, to play it out. So that's getting them used to holding the ball without shooting. And little by little then what you're trying to tell them is, look, guys, you shouldn't shoot unless, we'll just say, there's an 80% chance of the score. Don't take the 5% one because that's going up the other end of the field. And it gets them good at moving, it gets them good at playing ball around. Now again, going back to one of the essentials, if they can't strike and they can't catch, well then they can't do that stuff. So that's one little example, and we'll have a few in part 2, Dara.
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, we're pretty good our side here, Martin. If you feel there's enough there.
If there's one more of that, we'll take it. If not, we'll close the shop, lads.
Teddy O'Regan is wondering, have you any painting to be doing?
What's that there, Dara?
Teddy O'Regan is wondering, have you no painting that you could be doing?
Painting? Can you see the paint on me still? You can. I've had it all weekend. Okay, folks, listen, we'll close the shop there, and there's still quite a few in there. We're delighted you attended tonight, and we hope you got something for it, and hopefully we'll see you again in the coming week. So thank you very much. I'll close it off here now, lads, okay?